Hello and welcome. My name is Samantha. I'll be hosting AEMO's 2025 Summer Readiness Briefing today. Thank you for taking the time to join us. We'll be recording this session, and as we have in previous briefings, we'll publish the slides and the recording for the presentation to our website as well. Thanks, Anita. Before we get started, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands we're joining from and honour their ongoing connection to land, waters and culture. I'd like to pay my utmost respects to all First Nations elders past and present, and welcome any First Nations people that are with us. And I'm pleased to be joining you today from the lands of the Kulin Nation in Melbourne. Thanks, Anita. So we'll have 1 hour for this session today. Shortly, I'll hand over to Michael Gatt, AEMO's Chief Operations Officer, responsible for our electricity and gas system operations teams. Michael will introduce our summer readiness briefing today. Then we'll be hearing from Felix Levesque from DTN APAC, who will take us through the weather and climate outlook for the coming months to really set the scene for weather conditions and what we should expect. And then our final presentation today is from Ken Harper, our Group Manager Near-Time Operations. Ken will present on electricity and gas system readiness, network and generation availability risks, and system security and reliability risks. Then we're aiming to have around 15 minutes or so for questions. During Q&A, please feel free to either click on the hand icon at the top of the screen to raise your hand, come off mute and ask your question, or you can post your question in the meeting chat at any time and we'll respond during Q&A at the end of the presentations. We'd also love to get your feedback on the session today. We'll post a link to a short survey in the chat as well. That's it from me for now. I think I'll hand over to Michael to introduce the session. Thanks, Michael.
Terrific. Thanks very much, Sam. Today's session will provide you a bit of an overview and our most up-to-date perspective on the summer ahead. These are sessions, of course, we do every year. We prepare for every season, every day, and of course for every 5-minute time interval. So really important that we're able to share a bit of that with you today, and want to thank Felix and Ken, our presenters in advance today as well. We also have some other forums planned for those with an active interest in WA. We have the WEM Consultative Forum and also the Consumer Forum coming up as well. As part of our preparations every year, we engage directly with TNSPs, generators and market participants to kind of understand their readiness and capability for the summer ahead, but also to keep abreast of some of the risks that we may experience in any particular season. It's generally a collaborative process. It's very helpful. We do tend to work well, which gives us the level of preparedness that we really need for the season and for the risks that we're likely to encounter. Before we get into summer, I know we notionally talk about summer starting in November, kind of for our season. We're an operational summer, but at the same time, we've just kind of coming out of the back end of spring with lots of recent lessons learned as well. And we had a couple of really high weather conditions and high demand days, so kind of sharpens the pencil a little bit for operational readiness, that's for sure. And as expected, we've also seen some really minimum demand conditions starting to hit. And if you're keeping pace at the moment, the last couple of days in South Australia, some really extraordinary low conditions there as well. In October on the 4th, we set a new record minimum demand for the NEM at about 9.6 gigawatts, particularly low. With lots of forecast MSL conditions starting to materialise in the spring. And that's an ever-present risk, of course, for the summer ahead, which I'm sure Ken will dip into. At a very high level, without stealing his thunder, we would probably expect similar conditions for this summer as we have in the previous summers, with a couple of unique risks, which Ken will talk to today as well. Look, I feel like we're actually in a really good position. I always enjoy the level of preparedness that we do leading into it, but I'm also not naive to the nature of risks that exist, operating systems and markets. But I will say feel really well supported by industry and participants for the challenges that we face every day. And of course, that would be the same for the summer ahead. At this point, I'd like to hand over and welcome Felix from DTN. Go Felix. He's going to walk us through a bit more, some detailed insights on the weather.
Thank you very much for having me. So I'm Felix. I'm a meteorologist at DTN, and this will be the outlook for the coming summertime. On the agenda, we'll have a look at the current and future state of the climate and how that affects our weather outlook in terms of temperature, rainfall, winds, and other weather impacts over the next summer. So starting with the climate drivers update and outlook. In the Pacific Ocean, we've got our trusty El Nino Southern Oscillation, which phases between La Nina, neutral, and El Nino. And at the moment, we're seeing weak La Nina conditions. We've got stronger than average trade winds pushing warmer waters into the Australian region, and that increases our rainfall potential during the summertime. This is a weaker event, so similar to last year where we saw mostly effects for Queensland and New South Wales. We're seeing comparable conditions to last year for this coming season, and that'll persist until about the end of summer, phasing towards neutral as we head into the late stages of summer and into March. In the west, we've got the negative Indian Ocean dipole that's currently underway, and that increases our warmer waters around Indonesia and the northwest of Australia, sending more northwest cloud bands across the state, increasing cloud cover over the interior and rainfall over southeastern Australia. So this mainly affects western New South Wales, Victoria, and South Australia with increased cloud cover and rainfall, and is mostly a spring impact. Early summer, we'll see the index quite sharply return to neutral in the late stages of December and into 2026. So we'll see that index returning to neutral very rapidly as we head into summer. And then the final climate driver that impacts Australia's weather is the southern annular mode, which acts on a timescale of more weeks rather than months and seasons. So it can be quite volatile, and we've seen it become very volatile over the last 2 months with more phases of negative southern annular mode or negative SAM, which increases our cold fronts over the south of Australia, leading to more temperature swings for the country, hot and dry conditions into New South Wales and southeast Queensland, and stronger winds across the south of the country. During the inverse positive SAM phases, we see less cold fronts, more blocking high pressure over the southeast of the country, funneling moisture into New South Wales and Queensland, and leading to more lengthy heat waves for Western and Southern Australia. At the moment, we're seeing stronger negative SAM phases as a result of a southern stratospheric warming event, which has disrupted the southern annular mode pattern. And this is expected to persist over the next 4 to 6 weeks into the start of summer before we see a gradual trend back towards more positive SAM. So we'll see increasing volatility over the next few weeks, and then a tendency back towards a bit more stable weather, a bit more of a rainfall potential for Queensland and New South Wales, and then potentially for later in the season, more heat waves pushing into Western and then Southern Australia. And then combining all these climate drivers together, we've got very warm sea surface temperatures that enhance heat across Australia, especially for northern and eastern parts of the country. And this extra humidity in the atmosphere also enhances the potential for heavy rainfall events and more severe thunderstorms, notably for Queensland and New South Wales in the coming summer. So summarizing the climate side of things, we've got weak La Nina conditions that are developing into the coming summer, persisting for most of the summertime period before easing back to neutral as we head into the tail end of the summer month and into autumn. And it'll be similar or weaker than last year, so mostly in effect for Queensland and New South Wales. In the Indian Ocean, we've got a negative IOD, which is increasing the rainfall potential for the southeast of Australia over the next month, before easing back to neutral quite quickly as we head into the end of the year. And in the Southern Ocean, we've got quite a volatile situation at the moment, neutral to negative phases over the next month or month and a half, and then a tendency back towards more positive SAM as we head into the later stages of summer, seeing more blocking high pressure and potential for increased rainfall in the east of the country, and then more heat waves for Western and Southern Australia. And then finally, sea surface temperatures being very warm, amplifying heat and humidity, and as well fueling rain and thunderstorm events. Relating this to the weather outlook for the coming summer, we can see here a short-term forecast for the start of December, seeing quite a lot of heat building up across the interior of the country. some warmer than average conditions for eastern New South Wales and southeast Queensland as well, with more localized warm sea surface temperatures off the east coast, and then the potential for more of this heat to push into Western and Southern Australia, whereas Victoria and Tasmania see some cooler or closer to average conditions. On the right-hand side, we see the tail end of summer and into March, and then the forecast number of extreme hot days defined as 35 degrees or more for each capital city. So we see Perth seeing an increased potential for more extreme hot days, tendency back towards more lengthy heat waves in the west of Australia. And then as we head into Adelaide and the southeast of the country, we see closer to normal conditions, a bit more disrupted by this southern annular mode pattern, and then more focused on the tail end of summertime for seeing more lengthy periods of heat. And as we head into Sydney, we do see the effects of this negative SAM over the past 2 months and extending over the past next 1 to 1.5 months, seeing an increased number of extreme hot days. We've already seen quite a few, and then an increased potential over the coming 4 months. And then Canberra and Brisbane seeing closer to normal, just above average, seeing impacts of this negative SAM lingering, and a tendency back towards closer to normal as we head into the summertime. For our rainfall anomalies, it's mainly driven by these very warm sea surface temperatures and our La Nina signal in the Pacific Ocean. So we see an above average risk of wetter than normal conditions during the summertime for much of Queensland and New South Wales, driven by this La Nina signal and these warm sea surface temperatures. Whereas as we head into Western and Southern Australia, we see a tendency back towards normal or drier than average conditions in the summertime. Wind anomalies are quite variable over the summertime. We do see impacts of this tendency back towards more positive southern annular mode as we head into the tail end of summer, with reduced wind potential across the south and southeast of the country, and then potential for more variability across the south of the country as we head into autumn. For mostly Western Australia and Queensland, but as well northern New South Wales, as we saw last year with Tropical Cyclone Alfred, the warmer than average conditions across oceans in northern Australia, as well as La Nina signal, increases the potential for busier tropical cyclone season across Australia's regions, with mainly a focus on Western and Eastern Australia. We also see an increased proportion of severe tropical cyclones across the region, fueled by these very warm sea surface temperatures. So disruptions across Australia's industries is possible from tropical cyclones. Again, mostly a focus for northern parts of the country, but could impact parts of Queensland and more southern latitudes of Western Australia. A combination of warm and humid air leads to an increased potential for thunderstorm activity across the severe weather season. And it's mostly focused on central and eastern parts of Australia. Notably for New South Wales and Queensland, we see an increased potential of a busier than normal thunderstorm season, with a focus on heavy rainfall, fueling off these very warm sea surface temperatures, leading to very heavy deluges, and potential for flash flooding with thunderstorms, as well as an increased potential for hail, especially for parts of northern New South Wales and southeast Queensland with colder air in the upper atmosphere, leading to increased hail potential in the coming severe weather season. Damaging wind gusts with thunderstorms are a more normal risk, and we'll see the risk for Victoria reducing with the negative Indian Ocean dipole phasing away in the next few months, and that moisture source coming from the northwest shutting off for the Victorian state. Bushfire risk is variable as well as we head into the next 4 months. We're focusing mainly on parts of Western and Southern Australia, seeing increased potential for bushfire activity. We've seen some good rainfall across the southwest over the winter time, which will delay bushfire activity until probably later part of summer and into the autumn months. And we could see increasing potential for bushfire activity across mostly Western Victoria and southern parts of South Australia as we head into the summertime, with some rainfall deficiencies persisting from the past 2 years, and then a tendency back towards a drier phase of summertime, especially as we head probably into the mid to later stages of summer, where we see increasing heat across the interior and the potential for increased bushfire activity for southern and then into Western Australia as well. So summarizing the main weather impacts expected across Australia during the coming summer, less of a potential for heat wave activity, especially for the start of the year, more focused on sharp bursts of extreme heat, with frontal passages drawing heat from the interior, especially into southern and potentially into eastern parts of Australia. Eastern Australia does see an increased potential for humidity combining with this heat, leading to less intense heat waves, but more lengthy periods of low intensity heat waves. And as well, we see an above average risk of that moisture, leading to increased rainfall and cloud cover for Eastern Australia, as well as an increased potential for flooding along the east, and then drier conditions for Southern and Western Australia. An increased thunderstorm potential in the coming summer, focusing as well on Eastern Australia, combining that warmth and humidity, leading to a busy thunderstorm season. And then our frontal passages decreasing as we head into the later stages of summer, that SAM phasing from negative towards the positive phase, more blocking high pressures, less of these frontal passages, leading to strong wind events as we head into summer. And then the bushfire risk increasing for Western and Southern Australia, and lingering below average along the east of the country, with this above average rainfall potential for the coming summer. Thank you.
Thanks, Felix. That's great. Over to you, Ken.
Very good. Thank you very much, Felix. Thanks, and Michael. Both Felix and Michael mentioned earlier about sort of what the outlook that we've had so far. We've already had the first breaths of hot summer weather in New South Wales and Queensland last month, and obviously some mild conditions at the moment. But what I'll do here is the first 4 points I think Felix has probably covered more eloquently than I can in relation to the weather conditions. Generally, I think what we're saying here is consistent with what Felix just said there before. Would note, he did mention there was a lot of extreme days potentially in both WA and New South Wales in terms of that unusually warm. So I'd probably highlight that one in the weather outlook we've just gone through there. It looks a bit more severe than what we're flagging in our one there in terms of those extended heat wave conditions in New South Wales and WA. The other one's widespread flooding, bushfire risk and tropical cyclone risk, I think, as per Felix just covered there before. Next one, I'll cover it here, and there's a slide coming shortly that'll talk through a little bit more detail about the challenges of minimum demand as well as maximum demand. We're seeing conditions this week in SA of low demand, minimum system load conditions on a number of days, not just weekends. We're now seeing some of these conditions on weekdays as well, and we'll probably see those typically in some of the southern states around that Christmas New Year period. So the variability between low demand and high demand in various regions we're seeing increasing, and we'll be expecting that in this coming summer period as well. Wrote this slide a little bit earlier on, but we had to change it because some people would be aware we actually hit a Tasmanian minimum record demand earlier this month as well. So we are seeing highs and lows in all regions, all times of the year, particularly spring and summer, and in all regions there as well. Summer heat waves, we can see some pretty strong demands. We've seen those strong demands already in Queensland and New South Wales so far in October. We'll see how those go as we head further into summer. Generation and storage availability, pretty similar plant lines to last year. Should get a little bit more extra synchronous plant in New South Wales with the commissioning of the Hunter Power Station at Curry. Other regions about the same for synchronous plant lines, but a lot of extra battery capacity in all regions except Tasmania, and there's a chart later that will show that there as well. Network outages, down in a number of regions from what they are. I've got a chart on that shows that later, but similar or reduced levels in all states through there as well. The other one was we have made some slight tweaks to the summer outage guideline based on some conditions that we saw last year in a couple of particular regions. We've made some tweaks to that as well based on some of the conditions that we saw last summer and the impact of some of those outages, and we've put that slightly tweaked outage guideline in place with us and the TNSPs for this coming summer. The chart around the loss of load reliability probability out of the MT passer, I'll talk about that when we get there on under coincident heat conditions, particularly this side of summer in New South Wales and Queensland, and the other side of summer in Vic and SA. There are some challenges under some of those coincident heat events coupled with unplanned outages, and WA some challenges there around which we've got for supplementary capacity to manage the high demands we're expecting over there. Fuel supply, pretty typical. I'll cover a gas issue there in early December. Some challenges with a couple of gas outages which look okay, but just probably bring them to people's attention. And prudential risks at the moment low in the relation to what we're seeing for the conditions and the amount of supply that's in the system as well. It's all right just to flick to the next slide. Probably covered a little bit of this. Probably a couple of notable things to note is the orange bits that are there instead of the yellow bits. That's the battery capacity that's been added since last summer. In all regions, you can see very, very significant amount of batteries that have been commissioned over the last 12 months. So a lot of battery capacity come online in all jurisdictions. As I mentioned, Tasmania, no batteries down there yet, but certainly in all those other jurisdictions, very similar synchronous plant lines. A little bit increase in New South Wales with the assumption that Hunter will be there. The other plant lines very similar as well. That would have been the list of outages as at about Monday or Tuesday this week. I think it might still be roughly the same. I don't think I'm aware of any major changes to that as well, but just listing, and I won't go through them all for completeness, but that was the list of outages that were in there when we did the snapshot earlier this week. It's all right, we might go to the next slide. Operational demand, big swings and roundabouts. So we just had to update this in the last couple of weeks, but probably noting a few things here. Been a very long while since we've seen record maximum demands in a couple of regions. New South Wales SA, people might note there, that was actually the same coincident heat wave back in 2011 that went through both SA and New South Wales. You'll see it was set basically in the same off that same heat wave in those regions. Very, very big demands. Got pretty close in SA the last few summers. Haven't quite seen those heights in New South Wales for many, many years, but noting that one. Queensland, big record last year and were pretty solid demand just last month. So indicating probably in Queensland, we could still see a very solid number there this coming summer. Victoria got to in or around 10,000 last year after many years of much lower demand. So nudging that record that stood for quite a long period of time. Tasmania, only region in the NEM that's still a winter peaking system, so don't normally expect the huge demands there in summer, but still a pretty sizable number that stood for many, many years. And WA had 3 or 4 cracking summers in a row. Expect to see another big summer there in WA this year. Minimum demands, just quickly down that column. NEM, big drop, Michael mentioned it earlier on in October. And the other ones, we have seen record low demand so far in Queensland and Tasmania recently, and wouldn't be surprised to see SA and Vic hit those low numbers again over that next couple of months as well. I flagged that in the last point around that minimum system loads. We might see that during summer under some outage. We're also seeing it under system normal conditions in SA like we did this week as well. Next slide, please. Loss of load probability out of our MT passer would have been was run on the 10th of November, so this week's run. That would have come out highlighting some periods there where under certain conditions there are some higher probabilities of loss of load probability. That's generally coincident with extremely high demands. Probably look at that third bullet point. Gives a pretty good summary of the conditions that could be that. It's a combination of high demands as well as reduced generation forced outages, but particularly coincident high demands in New South Wales and Queensland this side of Christmas, and then in Victoria and South Australia through those other periods as well. Next slide, please. High impact outages, mentioned earlier, down a little bit in a couple of regions. Last year, there was a lot of catch-up outages from some challenges in New South Wales from the year before that. So the number of outages at the moment in the NOS in New South Wales are down a bit this coming period versus what we saw last year, and in Tasmania also down from what we've seen previously as well. The other regions pretty well similar to what we have there. Big one I'd say in WA, if people are interested over there, is actually a big connection that's going to be increased, the largest contingency size over in WA. The other augmentations, seeing whether we may get some extra if conditions allow, and we can do testing, potentially increases in Queensland and New South Wales and Peck and Haywood. If they come through, clearly we'll send market notices advising of those conditions and any changes to those limits that there are there as well. Next slide, please. Moving across to gas, we generally have pretty low demands in normal underlying demand for gas in the summer period, except for large periods where we might need lots and lots of GPG. There's some pretty graphs coming in the next couple of pages. So typically reduced domestic demand, we do see LNG going offshore in relation to that, but we do believe based on the amount of supply we've got and the needs that we can see, should be adequate supply through there as well for gas over the coming summer period. If we could go to the next slide, probably just talk about a couple of things on this next slide. Just showing there's a coincident pretty big gas outage. I don't know who's got the cursor. Someone's got the cursor, but you know, whoever's got the cursor can show that first the 8th of December, there's actually a pretty big coincidence. There we go, perfect. Around Longford and Otway, where there is a fairly large reduction on gas supply in the southern from the southern gas fields through that period. We have looked and spoken to people about that. And at the moment, we're looking at and believe it should be sufficient, but probably just bringing that to people's attention that during that period, which is still historically low for gas usage, there is reduced gas supply potentially available from some of those other ones, but we do believe there's adequate storage available in Iona and from Queensland to cover that situation. But we will monitor that, but just probably bringing that to people's attention of that rather large reduction in supply, southern supply during that back end of November, early part of December. Next slide, please. Iona storage levels. Just got an up-to-date chart of where Iona is currently sitting at. At the moment, I believe we are sitting pretty well okay in terms of where we currently stand. The trend should be pretty good, but clearly this time of year through to next winter, Iona storage would generally be starting to fill in the lead up to next winter. So we'll just continue to monitor that over the summer period in the lead up to next winter. But at this stage, we're not seeing any major one, but would note that last one, there's a full Iona UGS outage in early April that people may or may not be aware of in relation to that underground storage facility. Next slide, please. Next slide shows a really big swing we can see in GPG for various regions. So there's clearly some very big swings. Most of that's dependent upon either weather conditions or synchronous plant or absence of renewable generation during those high demand periods. So I can see some very, very large swing bars that you'd see there from region to region, year to year through that period as well. Just probably noting we normally see these periods quite low, but during November and December, early heat waves with scheduled plant being maybe a bit more plant out of service with a bit more heat, can see some very high levels of GPG usage, typically in November and December, or on the other side of Christmas to supplement the scheduled generation on high demand days there as well. So noting some very, very big swings there as well, particularly in February. You would note those enormous swings that you can see really does depend on that as well. But based on what we're seeing on those range of conditions, we think there is adequate gas supply to cover all of those conditions that we're expecting at this stage. RERT we have in place. If we need it, we can contract and use the RERT in the various jurisdictions. We haven't got the megawatts up here for reasons of confidentiality, but we do have reporting requirements where we do, if we use RERT, we'll report on the RERT that we've used and write reports around that. And clearly we'll also issue market notices where those RERTs are used or put in place. So at the moment, yes, RERT is in place as if needed to supplement managing reserve if we need it on these big summer days across there. So next slide, thank you. Communication engagement. Many of you we've written to, transmission providers, generators around summer readiness, and got information back from all of you. We'll do briefings with all of the discussion with the jurisdictions around summer readiness, of how we're placed for summer and how the jurisdiction's placed for summer. We also have fortnightly meetings around that as well. Market notices, run industry forums, and we've run a range of emergency exercise already in preparation for the coming summer. So for all of you that we've probably annoyed or contacted in relation to preparing for summer, thank you for all that information that you've sent. It's all really, really important. And we just thank you all for that as well. In terms of training that we're running training for the ROs, responsible officers in each of the jurisdictions, as well as we've had our crisis and emergency training provided for all of our relevant staff there as well. And we had a major external exercise with the NEM-EMF up in Brisbane in October in relation as well in terms of preparation for the coming summer. So I think we've done all our prep, and we'll see what summer brings for us. Now, there's a couple of slides here that talk about various risks. There's one here on network generation and availability. There's another one on system security with lots and lots of information on there. I'd probably just call out a couple of things. A couple of them I've covered earlier off, but this will be available in the pack that we send out. Network and generation maintenance. I mentioned earlier, we have done some tweaks to the guideline on transmission outages over this coming summer. Just reviewing what happened the previous summer with some lines and the way that conditions were changes. Some of those categories have moved around a little bit in relation to how we've categorised some of those lines with the TNSPs for outages if they want to take them for this coming summer. So I'd call that one out as something that we've changed. The other area, and I think Leanna might have mentioned, I think it's come out earlier, and it's also come out, I think, in the AEMO comms today, is under the plant cutout capacity derating. Market notices issued in advance of extreme temperature days. I think today we've updated our NEM local temperature alerts. We haven't reviewed that for the last 2 years. We've kept that in place and just added in Deniliquin and Lake Macquarie into those local temperature alerts, recognising where generation has been built in the last couple of years and where there may be some gaps in terms of our local temperature alerts in relation to where that generation mix now is as well. So that was a tweak that we've done there. It went through a major overhaul a few years ago, and this was just more of a tweak this time around. So I'd probably call that one out. And that last one I just mentioned before was in relation to gas, the GPG, the Iona refilling, coupled with that Otway and Longford outage towards the start of end of November, start of December there as well. So on that page, they're probably the main ones that I would call out if that was okay. On the next one, if that's all right, we'll just go to the next one. Probably a couple of things on this one just to talk to. Quickly would be clearly the minimum demand one. We have seen this week in South Australia some minimum demand MSL2, minimum system load 2 conditions. Won't be surprised to see some of those occurring originally I thought it would just be in spring, but we are seeing that in summer on both weekdays and weekends under some system normal as well as outage conditions. So probably just note we will continue to do those and may see more of those as we go through the summer period, through that period. The other one probably noticing would be on the NEM reserves one that we've got there in September, October. It's a period where we've actually got quite a lot of synchronous plant already out on planned outages with a couple of unplanned outages. We did have some situations of needing to intervene in both New South Wales and Victoria to manage system strength requirements for minimum number of units online. There are, in a couple of jurisdictions, still a number of units on major outages, which if we have some other unplanned outages may also still cause us some minimum system strength challenges, as well as potentially reserve challenges if those circumstances align. They would be the main ones I was going to call out over there, if that's okay. Questions and comments? Yes. Questions and comment section. All right, over to whoever's going to be our chair to take questions and comments and direct them.
Great. Thanks, Ken. And thanks, Felix and Michael as well. Lots of really great information in those presentations today that I hope you've all found useful. We will now move over to Q&A, and we've been very efficient on the presentations today, so we should have a good 20 minutes or so to take your questions. And we do have a question in the chat. So again, just a quick reminder, if you would like to ask a question, you're welcome to raise your hand and we'll unmute you and you can ask your question to the team, or feel free to pop it in the chat. As people are thinking of questions, we might go to the first question that we've got in the chat. How many MSL contracts have been agreed with BESS across the NEM? This might be a question for Sarah Tarpis, a senior engineer in our operations division. Sarah, if you're on the line, we'll go to you.
Hi Liam, how you going? We've completed this round of MSL transitional services, the contracting process, and we've put in agreements in Victoria. Does that answer your question?
So I might just extend your answer a little bit. You've sort of answered, but to most extent, excellent answer. People would notice that in South Australia, we have directed in South Australia. The implication there is that we haven't contracted for batteries in South Australia at this stage and used directions in there as well. So maybe for completeness, just to answer that one. So if that's okay, Sarah. Yep.
Thanks, Ken.
Yep.
Yeah, thanks, Ken. Thanks, Sarah. And thanks for your question, Liam. You're happy with that? Thank you. Over to the group. Do we have any other questions? Feel free to raise your hand, or if you've got a question, pop it in the chat. I know lots of content covered today, lots to absorb. But yeah, this is a great time to ask your questions of our team while we have them on the call. We might give it a minute or two. Oh, yep, we've got a question come through from Kelly Graham. Thank you, Kelly. Another question on minimum system load event. So for severe minimum system load events, what is the process behind which coal units get directed offline first? Yeah, great question. Thanks, Kelly. Maybe over to the team. Ken, are you best placed to respond to this one, or someone else?
Oh no, I've got someone, Sarah. I'm hoping Sarah's much better.
Sarah
placed.
again.
Sarah, are you
Over
the best place
Sarah.
to do this one? You might be the best placed, or
Sure. No, I'm happy to.
Yeah.
I'm happy to give it a crack. So the process there, we consider many different aspects when we're deciding which coal units to decommit. First of all, being how long it takes to get a coal unit off, what the impact on the MSL threshold of getting that unit off, if there are any other concerns and challenges that we may be monitoring and managing, such as voltage or frequency or reliability issues in the forecast timeframe. So the process is to consider all those different factors and make a call on the day.
Probably fair to add, Sarah, the hierarchy of controls for minimum system load conditions have a lot of operational options well before we find ourselves into directing coal units off.
Yeah, that's a great point, Michael. Fantastic. Thank you. Thanks, Sarah, as well. And thanks for your question, Kelly. Is anyone else thinking of a question? Feel free to raise your hand so you can come off mute or pop your question in the chat. We'll give it a minute or so, see if any questions come through. Or we might wrap up early. Maybe the presentations were so comprehensive, we've left everyone feeling pretty comfortable. Michael.
You'd be pleased to know I don't have a question, Sam, but thought I'd probably just take the opportunity to thank our market participants in particular for their support and information leading into the summer period. We pump out a series of letters and information, collate them, build them into our business systems. They provide high degrees of transparency in terms of their intent and risks, which is extremely important to assist us in navigating the decision making that Sarah and Ken alluded to. I think it'd be remiss of us not to thank them in light of that. Thanks, Sam. Yeah,
great one. Thanks, Michael. And we do have another question that's come through from Jordan Maxwell. Thanks for your question, Jordan. Would a direction or a constraint be used to ask a coal unit to come offline? Great question. Sarah, is this another one for yourself?
Sure. So
thanks.
The process is to apply a network constraint to bring that generator to 0, and then further directions if required.
Great. Thanks very much. And we haven't had any other questions come through. We've got, yep. Look, we're all a bit of a quiet group this afternoon, which is perfectly fine. We might go to, oh, yep, we've got another question come through. I think it's from Zeki, but apologies on the pronunciation. Just a thank you to the team for the presentation. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it. And look, if no other questions are coming through, we might do a little bit of a wrap up. Again, we really appreciate your time today. If you have feedback on this session or what we could do differently next time, please take a minute or so to fill out a survey. We'll pop a link to the survey in the chat. I did mention at the start of the session as well, we will publish these slides and a recording to our website for your reference. And some of you might be aware that we have a couple of key publications coming out between now and the end of the year. We have the Transition Plan for System Security due for release on the 1st of December, and the draft 2026 Integrated System Plan due for release on the 10th of December. And if you are interested in those publications, the best thing probably for you to do is to subscribe to our updates so you can stay across those reports once they're released. And look, we might double back. We do have a question from Luke, or is it Kelly, Luke? What is the minimum notice time you would aim to give if you need to constrain a coal unit off? Thanks for your question. Back over to the AEMO team. Sarah, is this one for you again, or Ken?
I can take the heat off Sarah if you like. Yeah, so we look at the we contact the participants we may have to direct, and we work out the latest time to intervene, and that does change depending on what kind of security issue we're managing, and also on the unit that we've identified to direct. So it varies, but it's always at that latest time to intervene, trying to give the market as much time as possible to solve the identified gap or issue before we direct.
Great. Thanks, Callan. Hopefully that's a good response to your question there. Oh, we've got another couple of questions coming through now. One from Rob. If we can sneak another one in, can you speak again, please, to slide 25 or 26, which showed the expanded demand over the coming summer?
I'll have to get someone to find it and see if I can remember. We can replay the tape. Maybe that's the easiest way, Sam. What I said last time. Can someone find the slide? I don't know. And happy to come off or ask what you wanted about the info.
Get us to Ross for keeping track of the slides.
Yeah. Who's got the slides projector? It's probably that one. Rob, would that be the slide? In particular, what would you? A line chart. That one? MC Passer?
Yes. And Rob, did you have a specific question in mind, or are you just keen for another recap on this slide? Feel free to we can unmute you maybe. Anita, if you're able to unmute Rob, or a recap, please, for the summer, for December and January. Any highlights there from your perspective, Ken, on expected demand just over the next couple of months?
Probably just highlight. I mean, my takes out of this one is that you have a look at the charts. I'll just maybe talk my thoughts, which could be dangerous, but let's see how we go. New South Wales, a big thing. Probably see on New South Wales, if the demand's going to get probably north of about 13,000, it looks like it's going to be a bit challenging, and we'd have to rely on interstate reserves if we're starting to see a demand that's sort of upwards of 13 or 14,000, that top left corner. or loss of units that would bring that threshold down from that 13 to 13, a bit above 13,000 level. When you go across to Queensland, it does look a bit unusual when you can see you've actually got nearly 14,000 megawatts of supply, and we've historically only seen demand at about 11,000. I think our 10 POE is indicating on the previous chart we might see a number that could nudge near, I think it was 12,000 megawatts, but it still says you've got nearly 2,000 megawatts of excess supply. So the Queensland loss of load probability going into that red zone up to 100% is actually driven by the assumption it's coincident New South Wales and Queensland heat, plus additional loss of a couple of Queensland units on top of the planned outages that we've seen there. So it is a conservative one for Queensland. I'd look at that and say a lot less risk in Queensland than I'd look at on the New South Wales chart. In Victoria, 10,000 megawatts probably just says that if demand in Victoria gets in or around 10,000 megawatts, we need interstate support at that level through there as well. And under some conditions, particularly where it's coincident with high demand in South Australia, there could be some challenges of sharing reserves between those two regions. So hopefully the words say something about that, but generally I'd say that's how I'd look for that. Yep.
They do, Ken, and it's not a completely helpful perspective, but to just give it a little bit of framing, it's generally an extremely high demand and low VRE scenario that the loss load probability shares. It's a great one to call out. Thanks, Rob. Good from a probabilistic viewpoint, but certainly not something from an operational planning viewpoint we would be overly concerned about.
Hope that's all right.
Excellent. Yeah, thanks, Ken. Thanks,
Sorry,
Michael.
There's a problem. If there's unmuting is a problem, we didn't realise it was a problem, so apologies for that.
Yeah, apologies, Rob. We weren't able to take you off mute. You might have been asking us your question and unable to hear you, so apologies for that.
I think I was just shy.
Thank you. That's great. Look, we haven't had any further questions come through, so we might look to wrap up there and give you a good 13 minutes back in your day. I mentioned earlier we will make this recording available and make the slides available next week or so, and we'll let everyone know when those are available. And if you do have any questions, always get in contact and we'll do our best to respond to you. But once again, thank you for your time. Really appreciate you joining us today, and we hope that session's been useful. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks, everyone.